Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Charlie Stoner. Today we're going to hear from two of our Academy alumni, Elizabeth Benson and Conrad Warren, both from the class of 2012. Please, Elizabeth, if you would like to just give us a quick introduction of what you do and where you work and maybe like your favorite class at CA.
So I went to UVA after Academy, and I first started my career in brand strategy. So kind of on the agency side, working with companies like Uber and Spotify, going through like massive rebrands, both visual and verbal, and then kind of frustrated with the implementation process because like so much of that work just gets handed off for them to implement. I was ready to move client side, so I actually joined a startup as the first employee and helped them kind of launch their brand and get that off the ground. And then ready for a bit more structure, I joined Tripadvisor, which is where I am now, and I do brand strategy and marketing. So it's kind of a hybrid role. On the marketing side, I help create brand campaigns, anything from like TV commercials to our Traveler's Choice Awards program. And then on the strategy side, I help kind of understand how our product is or isn't meeting current traveler needs and continue to iterate. So yeah, excited to tell you guys more.
And then I'm Conrad Warren. Like Charlie said, I graduated class of 2012 from Academy with Liz. I went to Denison University. After Columbus Academy, I swam on their swim team. I pretty much started in finance as soon as I graduated from Denison, and I've stayed there. First started at Huntington Bank in Columbus and then moved over to Morgan Stanley. And at Morgan Stanley, I'm currently in their capital markets group. And if you just think about capital markets for a second, it's helping companies assess or access financing through either the bond market or the equity market, so IPOing. And I've been at Morgan Stanley for 4 years.
Awesome. So what did you two major in at UVA and at Denison, and how much did that major impact your career path, and what did you get from pursuing that major that led you to, where you are now?
Yeah, so I was in the undergraduate school of business at UVA, and I did concentrations in marketing and information technology. Quite frankly, I graduated not really knowing what I wanted to do, and I didn't graduate with a job lined up, which most students in finance and consulting very much have their jobs sorted out almost like their junior summer. I just focused on like the skills that I learned in the business school that I liked and tried to figure out how to combine them. So from my marketing classes, I really enjoyed like the customer focus and the research and digging into like customer needs. And then I also really loved like the strategy side of business. So actually thinking about product line innovation and processes. And so that's kind of how, when I thought about those two, I didn't want to go into advertising, which is pretty far on the marketing end, but I didn't want to go just into strategy, which can be pretty like internal and quant heavy. So I landed in brand strategy and marketing, which is a nice kind of combo of the both. But how I really figured it out was I did an experience design thinking bootcamp after college, which is a bit more practical than most of my like theoretical courses at UVA, and that really kind of opened my eyes to the brand strategy industry.
I would agree with Liz, kind of just combining different kind of interests. I graduated from Denison as a chemistry and economic major. I really liked the chemistry side because it was more quantitative, analytical. And then on the economic side, I found that kind of gave me a good holistic view of, macro trends. So I tried to combine those as much as possible. And Denison didn't have a finance degree, but if you put the analytical side with the market side together, found it kind of created a quasi finance degree that I was interested in. So that's kind of how I ended up in the role that I'm currently in today.
To add on to that, do you two work on more of like the people end of business or the analytical end of business, or do you do both? How you work with people or how you work with numbers or both? It's like a combination. Sounds like more of like a combination of both for both of you two.
I would say I work both with, like you said, Charlie, numbers and people. My role in capital markets is kind of a technical one. I'm on their derivatives team, which help corporate clients assess interest rate strategies and basically hedge against the moves that interest rates could kind of cause the company harm. That itself is just kind of a very technical role. We do a lot of stuff with sensitivity analysis and trying to think about if interest rates rise, what happens to this company. So there's a lot of really granular kind of digging into numbers. We still use a lot of calculus and stuff that we learned in Dan Alexio's class. But then at the same time, I think there's a huge people component to these roles, and being client facing, you have to kind of navigate the intricacies of how clients are feeling about things and assessing how to best suit their needs.
I'd say mine's also a hybrid. I've done a lot of like customer research in my time, and both qualitative and quantitative. So that means that I've spent a lot of time, when I was at the brand strategy firm, it was called Wuorinen, and one of our projects was with Riot Games, which creates League of Legends. And so I was on 30-hour-long interviews with professional video gamers, and people who spend 12 hours to 20 hours a day video gaming. And so it's definitely a role that asks you to have a lot of empathy and be able to understand different types of people and take away customer insights from that and use that to drive business strategy. But then on the other side, we'll run quantitative studies to make sure that what we've pulled out of these interviews is actually validated. And so honestly, I pass a lot of that work on to data analysts. I'm not usually the one crunching the numbers, but definitely have to be able to have takeaways from it and understand what the data means.
What traits have you developed that you think are most important in your fields, and how did you develop those traits?
In brand marketing, empathy is definitely a huge one, being able to understand perspectives that are not your own, especially if you're in an agency. You're typically working with companies where you might not be their standard customer. So you can't be making marketing plans that, you would necessarily like, but the people that they're selling to or, selling services to wouldn't. So I think that empathy is a huge one. And then also just being able to be really adaptive, adaptive in terms of your leadership style, but also just how you work as a teammate is something that's hugely important. My role is very cross-functional, particularly at Tripadvisor. I'll work with engineers, data scientists, marketers, strategists. So it's just being able to understand different people's working styles and adapt to them is hugely important.
I definitely agree with Liz. I would say communication is a huge, very important kind of trait that you have to have. Being able to talk to people, but also listen to what people are saying and understand what it is that can be helpful to them. So take a bunch of information that they give you and then turn that into something that's a creative, good idea that can be applied to them. I think that comes with a lot of flexibility and being able to be adaptive, like Liz said. I think one of the other big traits that you see is that I think it takes just to be successful in roughly any job, but is just bringing energy, being excited, ready to go, and happy, excited. I think that people learn a lot from that and really can feed off of your energy. So I think that those are some of the key traits that you got to have.
Yeah, even just to bounce off of that, being someone that people want to work with and want on their team. And I think that, Academy teaches you to be very well-rounded students, but especially if you go into consulting, I was in brand consulting, but traditional consulting, a lot of times you're networking to get onto projects. They don't just kind of fall in your lap. So you want to be able to make connections with different leaders and managers that you admire and be someone that people want on the team to kind of get on the cool, juicy projects. Bringing your full self to work and being fun and having fun with it. We spend way too much time sitting in chairs to not enjoy what we're doing and the people around us.
Jumping into that a little bit, COVID was really challenging for a lot of people. There's plenty of benefits to working from home, but at the same time, you're kind of isolated. And going back into the office is where you can really show your true self, show your full self, and you spend plenty of time doing the actual work. But at the same time, there's a lot of social networking that goes on the day to day. So popping over to someone's desk, talking about the weekend, talking about what they did last night, asking about food, like restaurant recommendations. And I think those personal connections that you can actually make both internally at the company that you're working for, but also externally with clients or whoever it may be, different groups at the company. I think that's really helpful.
What do you think has been most challenging for you, or is most challenging for you, especially pertaining to COVID? Because I know both of you live in New York, and what's made your life different in the workplace and at home?
The office setup that I have is kind of unique. If you watched any like Wolf of Wall Street or like, I don't know, any of the shows with finance, it's like a big trading floor with 400 people. Everyone's on the phone, everyone's screaming, and kind of the energy is there. And it was a huge, huge adjustment going from the office and then into just kind of the work from home, doing your own thing at a desk that's not loud. There's not the energy. So I think that was a really tough adjustment. I think working from home, though, teaches a lot of things. I think you have to emphasize communication, and being in touch with your entire team throughout the day is like super important. I think people have adapted very well to the work from home challenges, but you do miss the relationship side of stuff. And there was a very deep, dark time during last March when nothing was open in New York City. The most fun you could have was like going to CVS to pick up a prescription. No restaurants are open. Grocery store lines were like 2 hours long. We've come a long way from there. Stuff's finally getting back to normal, but it was challenging not having any social outlet.
One of the biggest challenges in my position, and I've mentioned this, is the cross-functional nature. So just all of the different types of people that I work with, and being able to speak their language and, like understand what an engineer is talking about and what their requirements are. And certainly being remote made that even more challenging. So I think just being in frequent communication with people and not being afraid to just we all use Slack, which is a communication tool, and just give them a ring and hop on a quick call to hash things out. It's so much more challenging to do over messaging and not knowing what people's tone is, and you think they're frustrated, but they're not. So just being able to hop on quick calls and hash through things. And then another thing was I started in this position remote. I started in January. So it was very strange to be sitting in my living room completely alone, not knowing what I was supposed to do because I didn't have anyone showing me around. And I think just leaning into any of the silly social hours that they did, that stuff can be kind of dreadful, but it is pretty important at the end of the day to get to know people. And they'll have a magician do a Zoom call, and it's funny, and leaning into that stuff, but also allowing some meetings to kind of go off the rails. At first it was very I signed in at 9, I did my job and I signed off, but actually just some meetings get off track and we're ending up just socializing. And that's been really important for me to develop those relationships and feel like I have work friends, because I've not met many of them and I don't know when I will. So it's just good to have those normal, we call them water cooler moments, when you would have run into someone in the kitchen, but we don't have that anymore. So yeah, just bringing your full self and being willing to get to know people has helped me get through it.
I'm going to open this up to any questions in the audience for anything that I haven't covered. Do any of you have any questions for them?
What internships did you guys do while you were in college?
It's a good question. I would stress the importance to you guys of getting internships if you can, after your freshman year, definitely after your sophomore year of college, obviously after your junior year. I did not do that. I only got an internship after my junior year, and I did one in banking in Columbus. But I think that it's really important to get your foot in the door early and start as soon as you go to college, go to the career office and talk to them about different opportunities and different thoughts that they might have and how your major, or at least what you're thinking, could apply to those real life industries. You don't have to get it right. Like the reason that you could do multiple internships, so after freshman year, after sophomore year, after junior year, is like if the first one you don't like it, then you have a ton of time and opportunities to switch majors or switch into a different industry that you might be more interested in. So the more kind of at bats that you have, the higher likelihood that you're going to find something that you are really passionate about and want to do.
Internships are great. Like it's the only time that you get to really have like a trial at jobs. And I think it's so important for you to like figure out what you do and don't like from them. So I did intern after my freshman year, but I did my senior project at Victoria's Secret. So I maintained that relationship and was able to pick that internship up after my freshman year, which was great. And I was doing like brand events there. So like working on the fashion show and just like smaller activations. After my second year of college, I studied abroad, which is also a great way to use your summers during school. If you're not interning or working like a job, it's great to go abroad, great experience, a lot of fun, and also looked well upon on a resume. And then between my junior and senior years, I thought that I wanted to go into fashion. So this is where I'm like so thankful that I came to New York and interned with a brand called Kenzie, and it just wasn't for me. And if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have known. And I probably would have been looking for a job in fashion after school and had to go through a pretty significant career pivot. So I was very glad that I did that and then kind of went back to school knowing I could at least rule something out. And then when I started at the brand strategy firm, I actually started as an intern. So I'll also say, like, don't be afraid to graduate from college and intern again, because a lot of companies will only hire like directly after you've been an intern. They also want the trial period to make sure that you are a good fit and that it's, going to work out for both of you. And so I started my career with an internship, which turned into a job, and I was there for 2 years. So
I'll add one thing that you guys might think is funny. So after my sophomore year, I didn't have an internship, but I was a nanny for Jake Stauffer. So is Jake, he's a senior?
Yeah. Any other questions?
What motivates both of you?
I mean, one thing that motivates me is just like working with a really great team. And one of the questions is like, what constitutes success? And I think it's not always kind of the outcome of the project, but actually like how your teamwork was in getting there. We can always look at a marketing campaign and look at the data and understand what went well and what didn't, and why it may have been a success or flopped. But for me, it's really when you were like, wow, we were like moving and grooving the whole time. Like everyone knew what their role was. Everyone was bringing ideas to the table. I think that's when I feel like most motivated and most excited to come to work and hop on calls with my team and eventually someday get into a conference room and take on a whiteboard. But yeah, so it's really a lot of teamwork for me.
Working really, really hard, long hours on a project and pushing really hard, constant dialogue with the team and with the client. And then eventually the project comes to a completion and you're like, that was really cool. We started with a problem and we kind of checked all the boxes. We're flexible, adaptable, and we came to a solution and the client's happy. Everyone internally is happy. And I think that teamwork is really important to have. And I think, you kind of go through a number of these issues and kind of challenges that you face together. But at the end of the day, you work through them, and that's very motivating.
Definitely like learning from the outcome is critical, but I think the exciting part is working with a team and feeling really productive and excited to bring a project to life is what is fun about the day-to-day.
Like after each trade or transaction that we do like a high level recap on like pros and cons, what went wrong, what went right, where can we improve? And I think, everything, you hope for something that's very streamlined, but there's always challenges and stuff always comes up. Working through those tough spots is what makes the team better and what makes you better. And you learn from those things.
And even just to add on to that, like the look back, the retrospective at a project, it like can feel a little bit dreadful, but it is so important. And it's not just important for like the project that you're on and learning how to do better next time, but like in any review that you'll have with your manager or in any interview that you'll have with a new company, they're going to ask you like, what's a time that you failed and what did you learn from it? Or like, what's a time something went really well and what did you learn from it? And without having that like reflection, you won't be able to meaningfully answer those questions, which are really important in helping you progress your career. So recapping and reflecting on projects is critical.
Is there anything that you guys would like to add here at the end that you feel that we missed on or you feel passionate about that you want to share with everybody?
The only thing I would add is just like as you start your careers or even just like through college, just paying a lot of attention to what you do and don't like about the classes you're in or the jobs that you're in, and starting to create like a wish list for what your dream job would be. And that's something you can either then like compare to a job description that you're looking at or take to your manager, you know, in your review and say like, these are the things I love and these are the things I don't love. And quite frankly, like would love to do more of this and less of this. So just like really taking control of carving your path is really important and it'll help you kind of achieve the goals that you've set out for yourself.
I would say two things. The first is Columbus Academy has a lot of great connections. And so will whatever university you go to and leverage those connections. Like you can make career changing conversations and connections with people. And Columbus Academy is a tight-knit family that has a lot of successful alumni, and they're willing to listen to what you have to say. And whether that means giving you a job, maybe or maybe not, but they're always willing to go out of their way to spend time with you, to walk you through different ideas and kind of listen to you. So I would say leverage your connections. And then the second thing is enjoy Columbus Academy and enjoy college. It's truly like the best time ever. Once you're done with that, you want to be in a place where you can sit for 10 hours a day and be happy and enjoy what you are doing.
Thank you two very much for coming out and talking to us. We all really enjoyed what you had to say. You guys are quite famous. We've got like 40 kids here, so.